Hey everyone, Thrones of Britannia, a Total War Saga has just been announced, so I thought I'd run you through all of the information we have about it right now. First off, this is a Total War Saga game. This means that it's not the big historical Total War we're all waiting for, but a smaller, more focused Total War game. We'll get to what that means in a minute. The game is set in the British Isles of 878 AD, 13 years after the invasion of the Great Heathen Army. The Great Heathen Army was a collection of Norse warriors originating from Denmark, Sweden and Norway, and was also known as the Great Danish Army. It is said that the army was led by the sons of Ragnar Lodbrok, so Ragnar himself will not be making an appearance here. The Great Heathen Army historically landed at East Anglia in 865, which as I mentioned is a full 13 years prior to the game setting, and this is where they dealt their most damage, conquering large spans of Britannic coastlines including East Anglia, Northumbria, Mercia and eventually making peace with Alfred the Great when they invaded Wessex. In early 878, the year at which the game is set, Alfred the Great defeated the Vikings at the Battle of Edington. Alfred then chased them to their stronghold at Chippenham and sieged them until they ran out of supplies. A treaty was then made allowing the kings to remain in control of northern and eastern England. So interestingly, while we might think of the game as a sort of Viking invasion, and the trailer certainly paints it that way, heavily focusing on the brutality of the Vikings themselves have already landed and done most of their raiding and conquering for the past 14 years. Historically, at the time of the game's setting, they were now beaten and bloodied, owning a lot of territories but having to sign a treaty for peace, and even having their leaders baptized and converting to Christianity. Though the baptisms occurred quickly, the treaty dividing up the lands didn't come into full effect for a few more years after the game's setting, as skirmishes and unrest persisted. However, for the next 10 or so years after that, no major Viking attacks occurred until 892. So I find the setting to be pretty weird. It seems that the years leading up to the events of Thrones of Britannia sound far more turbulent and cool, with massive amounts of Viking invasions and conquests for a period of 14 years. It would have been awesome to lead the Vikings in their attacks, or to try and repel them as a British kingdom. There's still a lot of wars and kings vying for control, and Alfred was trying to pull kingdoms together, so that should be interesting. But the game's start reminds me more of an Age of Charlemagne with multiple kingdoms attacking each other, rather than a full-blown Viking game. There's nothing wrong with that. I guess I just think it would have been a bit more unique to deal with the invasions and introduce new mechanics around it, like food supplies and raids that get you resources and stuff like that. The Total War Attila DLC Age of Charlemagne, set 100 years before these events, let you play as the Danes, who were fairly Viking themed and had missions to do invasions of England, but it was a bit early for the proper Vikings we know when we think about them. The mod Age of Vikings, which you're looking at now, did however deal with that era and was really fun, but it would have lived to see Creative Assembly's take on full-scale Viking invasions akin to their medieval expansion from over 15 years ago. So that's pretty much the setting. There will be 10 playable factions, though we don't know who yet, but it's safe to assume we'll have Viking settlers, Anglo-Saxons and Gaelic clans. The game is built on the Total War Attila engine, and CA make a remark about improving performance. Please, please, please hopefully let that be true. The map will focus on the British Isles only, no European coastline is mentioned, and apparently the map will be highly detailed with more regional distinction, unique culture mechanics and deep character development. It looks like potentially little bits of Warhammer may be rubbing off on this game, and by the sounds of it, that's a good thing. Though the aim of the Saga titles positioned itself to focus on smaller Flashpoint scenarios in history, this Flashpoint apparently spans 300 years, leading all the way up to 1066. Again, this seems to be right before the Norman invasion, so for some reason CA just doesn't like invasions here. I find this time span to be a bit weird, as that's actually a really long year span on par with most full-blown Total War games, but either way, it looks like it won't be a full-price Total War game as it shares a lot of tech and some assets with Total War Attila. And also, the game is completely standalone, so you don't need to own Total War Attila to play it. It'll just probably look like Total War Attila. And that's pretty much all we know. The trailer focuses mainly on Alfred the Great. I'd personally never heard of him, so I'm gonna need to do a little bit more research to find out about him. Now, while the idea of Vikings had me stoked, I'm kinda disillusioned with it being set after the invasions. We won't get any proper gameplay until spring 2018, which means late March probably at the earliest, and I'm guessing the game will release after a 6-month marketing cycle, so we're probably looking at late spring. Another thing that I gleaned from the trailer is that while it looked pretty violent, there was actually no blood. It'll be interesting to see if there will be blood DLC for this game, and speaking of DLC, it'll be interesting to see what their pre-order bonus will be. It is CA after all, and this is a standalone game, so there most likely will be some sort of DLC, and there's definitely going to be some sort of pre-order bonus. The counter argument I guess to that is that it is supposed to be a smaller title, so maybe they don't have the time to do something like a blood DLC. Although, it is based off Attila and that DLC is already created for it, so it'll be all very interesting to see how we get it. In the meantime, I'm going to play Age of Vikings to get me in the mood and read up on my history. If you want to try out the mod for yourself, check the description below for it, and you can find the link to the Steam store page for the game and to their FAQ blog also. Thanks very much for watching. Let me know how you feel about the trailer and the setting below. Let me know if you think I'm crazy in thinking that it might have been more interesting to go a bit earlier, or is this period just as interesting for different reasons? Make sure you subscribe for all the info regarding Thrones of Britannia and for reviews upon release.